were younger, did you have that book? The book that you read over and over again, that you absolutely freaking loved, and you were so excited when you found out there was a movie of it, and you watched that movie, and it was shitty, and it was terrible, and it let you down, and it broke your heart, and it made you just wish that all movies were never a thing, ever. Because I had that book, and for me, it was Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine. As you can probably tell by the state that my copy is in, I read this book more times than I can count. Yes, I had other books that I loved. Yes, there was Harry Potter, there were other series and novels that were very important and influential to my life, but Ella Enchanted was like a comfort book to me. And then I watched the movie. The movie of Ella Enchanted is not a bad movie, but it is a terrible adaptation. I would not recommend it to anyone who's a fan of the book. The first time I watched it, I didn't like it. I didn't hate it, though, and I almost immediately forgot it. I actually didn't remember that I had watched it when I saw it at the place that we used to go to rent DVDs. Yes, I used to rent DVDs. My sister and I were choosing a movie to watch for something, I don't know, and we rented it and we watched it, and I just loathed it that time. And I had, like, only after we began it did I remember that I had seen this before, and that it was a bad movie. So, right now I'm going to talk about it. I'm not going to do the whole, like, here are the nitpicky plot hole stuff they changed. I'm going to talk about why it's so disappointing on a thematic level. So, to start off, I'm going to talk about a little bit about the book, and then I'll get into comparing it to the movie. The fantasy world that exists in Ella Enchanted is, I think, one of the more nuanced ones that you can find out there, because it doesn't have, like, the traditional, at least visual depictions of a lot of the fantasy creatures that are present. The elves are not fine-featured and tall and immortal or whatever. They do live for a long time, much longer than humans, but they have like this waxy skin, and they're not conventionally beautiful, and their teeth are a bit green. And the gnomes are this whole interesting, complex, separate culture that's sort of similar to how dwarves are often considered in fantasy mythos, where they're into mining and stuff. Gnomic civilization is actually even more explored in Ferris, the companion novel, but I'm not going to get into that right now. The point is, the culture that exists in the other species in Ella Enchanted are all mentioned briefly and all have brief cameos in Ella's journey. And each time, Ella will be respectful of their culture, she will learn from their culture, she will make an effort to adapt to how they live and how they expect her to behave as a guest. She uses her knowledge of languages to communicate with them in ways that are easier for them. She finds beauty and reverence at this giant wedding that she attends. She is very respectful of the elves, in contrast with her father, who as a trader is incredibly dismissive of the cultures that he is trading with. And I think that cultural sensitivity, even if it's not in like the typical human application that you see in the real world, is incredibly important to Ella's character. Because yes, Ella is more outspoken and more defiant and possibly rebellious than other people at that time, or her peers might be, but she's not disrespectful. She understands the importance of the perspectives of people around her. And then in the movie, they take that and they change it. First of all, they change all the tenets of the cultures of the elves, for instance. They're like weird Santa-elf hybrids who sing constantly, which I honestly have no idea where they took that from. And they make this weird stuff with the giants being like a subjugated class in Kyria, and like Char is oblivious to this somehow, and it's just Like, what are you trying to go for here? I know that you're trying to make Ella into, like, a social activist, but that doesn't work with the narrative, that doesn't work with the characters, it doesn't work with how those cultures are represented and described in the book. And by doing that, they also then turn Ella into this savior figure for what's-his-face, the elf who doesn't like being a part of his elf culture. And I think that's really messed up because it turns her character from, like, how can I learn from your culture, how can I be respectful and interested in your culture, to, oh, you want to become more like me, and you want to live in my objectively better society, that yes, I am fighting to better as a social activist who protests against the prince, and I don't like them doing that because it's an almost, like, colonialist take on this definitely not colonialist story. Like, yes, it's very influenced by the whole, like, European history ideas of fantasy, but the people of Kyria are, on the whole, not aggressive or obtrusive to the non-human species living in their country. Except for ogres, which is kind of weird, but also the ogres are a genuine threat to the populace, so you can go both ways on that. Another problem that I have is Char. His entire characterization in the movie, and Ella's, is just so incredibly wrong. Not to mention that they cast a white guy to play him when he is described as having swarthy skin and dark curly hair, and the fact that the Kyrian and Iorthian royal families have intermarried in the past, so he's probably almost certainly not white. Thea is, at least for the most part, a not white country. Ella Enchanted, the book, is at its core not a love story. Char, the love interest, is incredibly important to the story, and his relationship with Ella is an integral part of the narrative, and I love their relationship and how it develops. But it's not entirely a love story. There is a lot of other stuff going on, and its main purpose is to explore Ella as a character and how she develops and grows and has her own desires, objectives, willpower, and autonomy despite her curse. Her curse makes her be completely obedient to any order, but she is able to be kick-ass despite of that, and to then use that awesomeness to save herself. The movie takes this love story with a protagonist who is not after romance, but not opposed to it, and a love interest who is respectful and interested in her, and at first they only have friendship. They take that love story and turn it into every rom-com ever. And my problem with that is you take someone whose disinterest in romance comes from a preoccupation with other things and make her disinterest into this, I'm a strong, independent female who doesn't need a man to define her, which is overplayed. We've seen that. That's not who Ella is. And the fact that Ella and Char are friends for, like, over a year before anything romantic happens, at least on Ella's side, is incredibly important. Ella's relationship with Char is not the typical fairy tale princess-prince dynamic. It's built on mutual respect and friendship and understanding and communication. And then the final scene is entirely about Ella's consent and autonomy. Char doesn't swoop in and say, I'm here to save you from your abusive stepfamily. Let me marry you and carry you off. He says, you don't have to be Ella if you don't want. You don't have to marry me. It is up to you. Tell me what you want me to do. Tell me what you want from me and what I can have of you in my life, and you will determine this. And Ella, in that moment, like, is able to break her curse and find a freedom from this oppressive part of her life through making her own decisions, through answering him on her terms, not because she has been ordered to, because she genuinely feels that she would like to consent to this. And that, to me, is incredibly meaningful. That the reason that she does not want to marry him initially is because her curse is in the way, because she doesn't want to put her people and her kingdom at risk. She isn't refusing romance for personal reasons. She's not pursuing romance as a way to save her from her curse. She is making choices based on what would be best for her kingdom and herself and the person who she is in love with. And yeah, it's painful and horrible, but it's beautifully done and beautifully written, and there's a lot of meaning there, and there's a lot of things that you can read into Ella's character, like the fact that she is under these situations where she is constantly controlled and forced into expectations that do not suit her and do not confine to her, and she has no control over that, but she is still able to guide her own life. She finds loopholes, she fights back, she is resilient. In the movie, Char is every rom-com guy, and Ella is every rom-com girl, and they are we're at odds at first because we don't fully understand each other, and she doesn't understand how he can be so oblivious to the things that she is interested in rectifying in the world, and then he grows to understand her and he falls in love with her and they're in love and it's so meaningful. And that's dumb. It takes away the deeper meaning, it takes away the interest, it makes the story solely about their cliched love story instead about this interesting and complex character development and process that Ella goes through. And that's stupid. Last thing that I'm gonna say about the love story before I move on is the fact that she's gonna marry Char. Like, she goes to that weird mirror place where he's gonna propose, and she's got like the knife behind her back or whatever, and like, no, you don't let it get to that point. In the book, Ella knows the downsides of her curse. She knows what could happen if she makes the dumb choice and marries the guy despite what she wants to do. And instead, she does her own thing with the, I have to deal with this, and yeah, it fucking sucks, and yeah, I want to marry Char, and yeah, we're in love, but I'm not in a position where I can marry him right now. You shouldn't let it get to the point where you're like literally standing next to him, about to kill him. That discredits Ella's intelligence and resourcefulness and willingness to be self-sacrificing. Fucking movies. And speaking of the love story, I'm going to briefly mention Fairest again here. One of the reasons I think that the love story in Fairest doesn't work as well is that not only is it less integrated into the plot, but they're also almost like instantaneously vaguely attracted to each other, and yeah, sure, the prince doesn't have much of a personality, but the main thing for me was that I couldn't buy them liking each other because they hadn't known each other or gotten to know each other all that long. Maybe that's my gray romanticism that tends toward the demi-romantic side of things talking, but I don't know, I feel like the fact that Ella and Char get along from the get-go and that they really like each other is one of the more beautiful things about the book, and that you see this love story that is not even a love story on Ella's end until like the last third of the novel. What's up? I discovered that this video was really long while I was editing it, so this video will be divided into two. Here ends the first segment of Ella Enchanted rant thing that I'm doing, and stay tuned for the next portion, which will be coming soonish. Bye.